Thanks tonight, there's been like the specific site plan and staff has proposed conditions. We don't have the authority to do that at this point, but they still have to meet all state requirements and all ordinances that are on the books with their site plan and their building permit. So they still have to go through plan review before they can begin construction.
Thank you. Mr. Bollinger, you good? If they do what they say they're going to do?
If they fix it, I'm good with that part, but it means they, on the rezoning, it does mean they can do whatever they want. They don't even have to tell you what they're doing.
Yeah.
Other than state law, they're good with y'all for the city. But that zoning probably ought to be adjusted to where it protects the city better and the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, do I have a motion?
I'd make a motion to take this off the docket so they comply with Mr. Bollinger's water problem. That'd be my motion.
I second it.
I'm not sure that just for now that it's been motioned and second, I'm not sure that as compelling as the water problem is, it's part of this rezoning.
Well, I would agree with you, but you know, we're sitting here trying to look out for the people of Kernersville. Mr. Bollinger's got a problem dealing with multi-million-dollar corporations. You know, the only person between him and all that water mess is us. And if we can hold their feet to the fire and have them do it, that's what I'm about.
And I think that will cause them to do it in an expeditious way. If we go ahead and make that a requirement, that it'll get done and it won't drag their feet in this process.
If I can suggest, and staff can speak to this, or the applicability of this, could that be deferred to staff? Can we work this out with engineering, planning, and town attorney, make sure that situation is remedied correctly? Speak tonight to the rezoning component and give staff the authority to manage the correction of any ongoing issues out there, is what I think I would respectfully ask.
Madam Mayor, I don't.
Yes, please, Mr. Swisher.
I don't
sit
think
down for a moment. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, you can't, I don't think, technically continue it pending something else be done. Of course, the board can certainly vote to continue the matter until December. That's what they would like to do. And in the meantime, Mr. Ballinger and the petitioner can work on the issue and then come back in and determine whether or not it's been corrected. I think Mr. Johnston's suggestion is probably the best way to handle that. Let staff and the attorney handle that in some fashion, and I'll defer to Ms. Garner on that. It might be that we have the leadway in there to issue a notice of violation for violation of the zoning requirements from the previous case. But I think if you continue it, you might just want to say that you continue it until December without any conditions on the continuance. Then I'm not exactly sure if you could deny the rezoning based on conditions from a previous rezoning. I think that would be a little bit of a catch there as well.
Ms. Garner?
With a general use case not allowing for conditions to be applied by the alderman, I'm concerned, and without Mr. Powell here, I'm concerned about this being an off-site improvement that's sort of being conditioned for approval and whether or not that stretches the authority. My usual joke is that I'm not an attorney, but I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express once, but that still doesn't make me an attorney. So Mr. Powell's absence is concerning to me. I think Mr. Swisher's advice was solid, though, that it is potentially a stretch to try to deny a rezoning based on a previous rezoning and conditions, that the notice of violation route would be the more appropriate route for that. And Chris Jensen has been working with Michael Johnston to review the plans and to make sure that everything gets cleared up for Mr. Ballinger, but that's my non-expert advice on the legal front.
If I can make one just brief comment, and to Ms. Garner's point, we have been working with Jensen. No violations have been issued against the project, and he is fundamentally aware of the situation ongoing out there. So I don't believe it's that we are in violation. Again, we are working diligently and good faith to get this matter resolved to everybody's satisfaction. I will add that due to some contractual deadlines, or not to take the December as a contractual obligation there, that would.
So I do have a concern that this is a rezoning for zoning docket K805, the second phase of this development. And Mr. Ballinger's comments are related to the first phase. I don't have that zoning docket number handy, but you don't have it either. But the first phase that is closer to Macy Grove Road, this is a second phase. But Mr. Johnston also brought it up, the first phase, in his presentation. So, it has been kind of all wound together tonight. It does seem like a reasonable approach would be to continue this. We could continue it to the November 30th meeting. Does that address some of your concerns about your timeframes?
Yeah, we can make the November 30th meeting work. My concern is the delineation of, again, we haven't been noticed, so there is no fault, there is nothing specific to remedy. This is just a very open-ended situation of, do I need to go clear 5 feet? Do I need to clear half an acre? It puts us in an adverse position such that, we're being tasked with something that is very open-ended as, per engineering standard planning. We have not been noticed of fault correction. So that's my concern, is just that what we are being tasked with isn't yet hittable.
And Madam Mayor, again, you hit on it. It is a separate case. You're not going to be able to put a condition on this case based on the previous case. So, and if I remember correctly, Mr. Ballinger was here when Mr. Hackett did the apartments, and he also had water issues at that time. So I think the correct course of action is to let community development, our engineer, Chris Jensen, work with Mr. Johnston and work with his folks and get the water runoff. There may still be water on Mr. Ballinger's property simply because that's the way the water is going to run.
Because of the creek.
Because of the creek.
About.
But I think if our engineer works for Mr. Johnston's engineer and make sure that they are within state guidelines, within town guidelines for that water runoff, I think at that point, regardless of what the water is doing, the town has done all that it can do in regards to the water runoff. And again, Mr. Ballinger's had water issues when the apartments at Gray's Landing were built. He spoke to the water issues in the first case that Mr. Johnston had, so they're there. They are working on those. And again, I think the correct course of action is, if the board chooses to approve the development, is to approve the development. We continue to work with Mr. Johnston and his crew. He's not been noticed violation yet, so he's not in violation. If it gets to that point, we can certainly issue that notice of violation and work at it from that angle, because you can't go back. You're not going to be able to go back and put a condition on this case that says he has to do something in the previous case. As long as he's meeting the conditions and the requirements as set out, he's meeting those conditions and requirements.
Mr. Johnson, you can sit down. All right, so as to this, the zoning docket K805, does the board feel like it has enough information to vote tonight? Or do we have more questions of our attorney? Do we have more questions of staff? Do we have more reasons to continue it? Or are we prepared on zoning docket K805 to vote tonight?
I think we need to consult with our attorney. And he's not here. Through no fault of his own. No conditions, no nothing, just 30 days. Sorry, would it be 30 days?
Was proposing the November, we have a meeting scheduled, I believe, for November 30th. Clerk could confirm that. So it would be November 30th at 6:30. Same room, right here.
I don't believe that'd hurt anybody. And I'd feel better about it. I don't know about the rest of them. There's some things that come up tonight that I didn't anticipate.
I'm okay with that as well.
Is that an amended motion?
We haven't made a motion yet.
Well, there was a motion and a second
Oh,
already.
all right.
Second.
Oh, that's right.
So it's an
That's all I
amended
got
motion.
talking about.
I would amend that. That would be an amended motion.
All right.
And-
So
and
what's
that's,
your amended motion? To continue this until November 30th?
Right, and so that the board members that, need some direction from our town attorney can do that, so we can move forward in a knowledgeable position.
Okay.
That's my motion.
Just a motion?
Yes.
And I second it.
Mr. Johnson, could you make November 30th? Oh, you can stand up again.
Yeah.
Okay, if you can stand up to the microphone and just repeat that.
Yes, we'll make November 30th work.
Okay. All right, I've got a motion. I've got a second. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. All right, so this will be continued and we'll hear it after the annexation that was continued. No, the annexation is the December meeting. So this will be the first thing on the agenda. The annexation for that we continued will be heard in December. So this will be the first thing. This will be the first thing on the agenda. Yes. All right. All right. Item F is a public hearing on the Kernersville Development Plan, and it goes along with a rezoning, which is item G. So we've got the two public hearings. Catherine, is there one presentation or two presentations?
There's one presentation, it just rolls into both, but I can stop after the KDP if that's what you prefer to hold the hearing.
How about we do one presentation and we'll do two votes? I think that will work. Are you okay with that, Jim? Okay. All right. So we've got a public hearing on the Kernersville Development Plan. Curtis Swisher, agent for the town of Kernersville, because Mr. Swisher as always brings the Kernersville Development Plan amendments. Again, for consideration of an amendment to the Kernersville Development Plan to amend the land use plan for medium density residential to high density residential for property located at 411 Salisbury Street, being the PIN number listed on the agenda containing a total of 1.89 plus or minus acres, zoning docket KDP 62, and then a consideration of a resolution amending the Kernersville Development Plan, and then a public hearing on a rezoning. James Davis, agent for Donald Ballard, owner, a single-phase conditional use rezoning from RS7 to RM12C residential multifamily conditional use for property located at 411 Salisbury Street, zoning docket K806. All right, Ms. Gardner.
KDP 62 is a request to change the land use plan from medium density to high density residential for the parcel in question, which is bounded by Salisbury Street, Woodbine Street, and Partridge Lane, shown here, outlined in the dark black line. Medium density is defined as areas primarily located in the central areas of Kernersville and the north side of North Main Street. Medium density residential areas provide an excellent source of moderate priced housing. There are limited areas available for medium density housing. However, the mixed residential areas offer the opportunity for additional medium density housing. The land use plan's definition of high density residential is land use that is primarily used to provide rental housing. Kernersville is fortunate that it has a large number of apartments and one of the lowest average rental costs in the triad. Expansion of high density land use must be carefully evaluated to prevent an oversupply that would undermine the existing high density developments. High density areas are located in transitional areas and have convenient access to major thoroughfares. As we talked about at the last month's Alderman meeting, that high density, this definition of high density residential may not exactly fit what is high density residential today. What is being proposed is a higher density single family development of townhomes. So that's attached units, one house on one lot with a common wall. So this is the adopted definition, but it may need a tweak to fit the current housing market. But staff and planning board both recommend approval of the attached resolution to designate the property at 411 Salisbury Street from medium density to high density residential, subject to the approval of case K806. This was heard at the planning board meeting in October, and all members present voted in favor. If there are any questions on the KDP, I'd be happy to answer that before we move on to the rezoning. Okay, so the rezoning is from residential single family RS7 to residential multifamily conditional, so RM12C. It is in the central Kernersville overlay district, which drives a lot of the design aspects of the site. So the applicant's proposed use is residential building townhouse, a residential building which contains 3 or more dwelling units. Each unit occupies 1 zoning lot. So again, it's attached housing, 1 unit, 1 lot with a common wall, but more than 3 units in each building section. The site is just under 2 acres, clocking in at 1.89. They're proposing 22 residential units. Other associated site improvements include parking, an enclosed trash facility, and buffer yards and street yards as required. So you'll note that the buildings are all, for the most part, pulled up to the street. This is consistent with the historic architecture along Salisbury Street and in this area. In the block that fronts onto Salisbury Street, they've proposed the end units to have a 1-story wing to also transition the building along the 1- and 2-story buildings that exist on Salisbury Street. So it mimics some of the historic nature and then also serves to screen the parking behind the buildings. This is the building elevation that meets the central Kernersville overlay district intent with the horizontal siding on the 2nd floor, but brick, a mix of brick and siding with decorative siding in the gable ends along the front, but also porches, divided light windows, and other architectural features that are in keeping with the historic nature of the area. The applicant has requested a modification from the strict interpretation of the design standards of the Central Kernersville overlay. He is requesting that they would like to use cementitious fiberboard. The UDO only represents horizontal. I think at the time horizontal was the predominant siding use, but has also proposed to use the board and batten style siding on the 2nd floors. This was discussed at planning board, and planning board voted to recommend approval of this modification, and so that has been reflected in the planning board report and in the conditions. They have requested or proposed that you strike one of the conditions that was proposed by staff, but otherwise the elevations remain the same. So the Kernersville development plan, current land use plan being medium density, proposed land use being high density. High density is found already in place to the east of this site, as shown in the map. So the darker red orange color is the high density residential that already exists. Planning board and staff's recommendation is to amend the zoning ordinance by rezoning this property from RS7 to RM12C, finding that the rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan and being both reasonable and in the public interest. because the conditional use district allows the specific uses to be considered with that site-specific layout. It is consistent with the land use plan as amended and is consistent with existing multifamily zoning and land use plan designations immediately to the east. And the site layout and buildings architectural designs are compatible with the existing development and further the Kernersville development plan of creating high-quality built environment and infill residential. Planning board and staff also recommend approval of the site plan and conditions subject to the planning board's removal of condition 4B that would allow the applicant a greater variety of siding styles in the upper stories. And then the vote for planning board was similar to that of the KDP for the rezoning, with all members present voting in favor of the rezoning. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, this is a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open. Have Mr. Davis signed up to speak? It's a combined public hearing on KDP 62 and K 806, by the way.
Jim Davis, 6026 Old Orchard Road, Kernersville, North Carolina. Madam Mayor, Board, good evening. I'm a principal with Channel Marker Investments, and our development firm has over 25 years of experience in a variety of product types, primarily residential. I've also been a resident of Kernersville for 20 years, and we're very fortunate to be able to raise our family in a community like Kernersville. It's been a pleasure to watch the community grow, much to board and staff's work. And if really this is what qualifies as an infill development. If you had told me 10 years ago that I'd be looking at infill development in Kernersville, I would have said you're crazy. But that is where we are today. And it's a type of development project that we really enjoy. It's a smaller niche project with an opportunity to create something unique. You have, as mentioned, apartments to the east and southeast of the property, single family residential along Salisbury and portions of Woodbine, institutional with the Folly, and then you have offices at the corner of Salisbury and Main. We believe the design before you tonight blends in very well with the fabric of the landscape surrounding the property. It provides a transition from apartments to single family and does so with a scale and a product type that is very appropriate to the area and the market. The property is under just under 2 acres, so we're looking at, again, a transitional density of more around 12 units per acre. Another factor that excites us greatly about the site is the opportunity and walkability to downtown, the Folly, Senior Gardens. I travel a lot through the Carolinas for business, and the cities with the most vibrant, thriving downtowns are those that have a good residential base supporting it. We view this development as an opportunity to support the downtown area with residents walk down to grab a bite to eat, a drink, shop, and support the downtown merchants on a regular basis. So that's just a little bit from the land use side. From the rezoning, we have worked very hard with our architect and engineer to make this development blend in harmoniously with the surrounding area. A lot of credit goes to staff as well. There were several versions and a lot of tweaking to the plan, the design to make it work. It's a challenging site for a number of reasons. It took a lot of time and effort to come up with the plan that's shown before you this evening. We situated the site plan so that the parking's to the interior of the site. As mentioned, the buildings are positioned with the front facades facing Salisbury and Woodbine. Everything's rear loaded to try to keep everything contained on the interior from a parking standpoint. We've incorporated a variety of our architectural elements to provide some depth mentioned to the buildings, utilizing architectural shingles, standing seam metal roofing for the porch elements, dormers, wood beam accents, and a mix of brick and siding material. Prior to you enacting the requirement, we also held a neighborhood meeting on September 28th, inviting the surrounding property owners, actually a little over 200 feet from the site. We had 4 attendees. Most of the interest was regarding the site plan and access. And after reviewing the plans, designs, all the feedback was positive that evening. We've also met or spoken with surrounding stakeholders, all of whom are in support. As Catherine mentioned, the only real point of contention is we differ with staff somewhat regarding the design, specifically the siding as it relates to the Central Kernersville Overlay District requirements. We have submitted and would respectfully request that the alternate design provided be approved as an option for development purposes. It is our opinion that the board and batten siding design provides a look that blends nicely with the overall style of the building, and it was utilized historically in the mid-1800s in the Carpenter Gothic style of architecture. It was a common building method for more moderately priced country-styled homes as well as utilitarian buildings, as noted by planning. Today, this style is reflected in something we commonly know as kind of modern farmhouse, and as you could say, it aptly reflects the character of Kernersville. There are several developments in Kernersville with townhomes currently under construction, and every one of them utilizes the horizontal style siding. This is a niche infill development close to downtown, and we'd like to distinguish our product with something that looks and feels different than everything else being constructed in the market. I appreciate the time and consideration of our petition. Happy to answer any.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Karen Keys. I currently reside at 500 Salisbury Street, which is directly across the street from the proposed property. In general, I'm very in favor of it. I think it's a welcome addition. It's looks like a really nice plan, and I think will help to increase property values along Salisbury. I'm currently in the process of purchasing 500 Salisbury and hope to close on that property very soon. And my questions are, Salisbury and Woodbine it's a quiet area, but it's a pretty busy little intersection for having nothing but a stop sign there. There are very busy bus stop in the morning and the afternoon. And being directly across the street from the property, I see near collisions frequently of people trying to make a left out of Woodbine. Just wonder if there are any plans to address additional traffic in Salisbury.
If you could address the questions to us.
Thank you. Just wondering if there's any plans for the city or the developer to take in this sort of influx of new traffic, and especially with those bus stops with a lot of students from the apartments coming out.
Did you have any other questions?
No, that's it.
Thank you. Ms. Garner?
Since this went through the Development Review Committee, it was reviewed by the town engineer and NCDOT, and there were no requirements identified other than the extension of the sidewalk along Woodbine Street, but no other improvements were determined to be necessary based on the volumes of traffic.
There's a pretty strict set of rules for all of that, for a number of trips per day and that sort of thing before they start requiring turn lanes and that sort of thing. But you raise a very good point. So, all right, is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone here in opposition? Seeing none, I'll declare the combined public hearing closed. All right, first let's consider the amendment to the Kernersville Development Plan. This will be zoning docket KDP 62. Any questions, concerns, comments?
I have no concerns. I'd motion to approve.
Okay, I've got a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a second. Motion by Alderman Thompson, second by Alderman Gorham. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. All right, now the rezoning. Questions, comments, concerns?
I have one question on the design. Are we changing it from vinyl siding to total cementitious siding? If it's approved, I'm just trying to make sure I understand the horizontal siding. You mentioned cementitious siding. All cementitious siding?
The UDO references horizontal vinyl, and I think at the time it was written, that was the predominant product on the market. So I think it's the applicant's intent to use cementitious. The planning board wanted to strike condition 4B because it would restrict the siding to horizontal of any type. And they felt that he should be allowed to have horizontal or vertical. So I believe the intent is cementitious of board and batten, but I'll let him speak to that.
So you're agreeing also with the planning board's decision? Okay. All right, if you could answer the other question.
But that's what,
Thank you.
Just some background, when the overlay conditions were established, there was a desire to give some specificity to make sure that the higher development standards and architectural interest was somehow an objective standard, so that it is possible that technology and styles could have outdated a few of the provisions. All right. Chris, did you have a motion?
Sure, I'd motion to approve as written by staff with the changes to cementitious or horizontal siding, however you'd like to word that.
And the removal of condition 4B.
Yes.
All right.
I second.
Got a motion by Chris Thompson, second by Mr. Penix. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. When will you start working on this?
all the,
Okay.
you're an architect. Hopefully first of the year.
Okay, super. Thank you.
I'd like to add a comment.
Go ahead, Mr. Barrow.
Mr. Swisher, do you remember the last time the town had interaction with this particular piece of property and what happened? Been a long time.
If I
ago.
remember correctly, we may have had some interaction about the house that was on that property.
Was.
And it got torn down. And that was
Yeah.
probably, I'm sure Ms. Kohler can probably tell the exact date, but that was probably
Yeah.
25 years ago, maybe,
It's
or
been
30
longer
years
than
ago.
that, 35 years.
And it was a beautiful house. in
Oh, I
its
remember.
Time.
I remember
But
well.
it's been several years since the house has been torn down. I
The
remember.
town was wanting some work done to it, and they were negotiating. They were going to meet over there one morning to discuss it. When the town officials got there was no house.
It disappeared quickly.
Oh, big.
Just another observation. Thank you, Jim, for all your efforts to beautify downtown. And I'm sure that is a parcel of land you walk by frequently. Thank you. All right. We are to the public session and speakers from the floor. Is there anyone who'd like to address the board on an item not otherwise listed on the agenda this evening? Okay, we will move on then to item 2B, consideration of a resolution setting the date of a public hearing to consider closing Moravian Lane. Mr. Swisher?
Madam Mayor, the petitioner is requesting that the board continue the resolution setting the date for a public hearing. They continue that until December, which would then make the public hearing in January.
Okay, do I have a motion to continue?
So moved.
A motion by Alderman Thompson,
Second.
second by Alderman Gorham. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. This is to continue the consideration of this. It's unanimous. All right, so that will be on the December agenda
Yes,
as a
ma'am.
public session item.
Correct.
All right, item C is consideration of an ordinance for budget amendment number 4. Mr. Swisher?
Madam Mayor and Board, you have in your packet budget amendment number 4. The biggest part of that is we're having to do a budget amendment. As you all know, you voted to assume operations of the botanical garden. So we have to get prepared for those expenses that will be coming. And this budget amendment is for $517,987. The biggest portion of that is to pay off the outstanding mortgage on the property, about $340,000. And the remainder of that is for the salaries, insurance, so forth for the last 7 months of the year. As you all know, that was not budgeted in fiscal year 22-23 budget. So we need to go ahead and do a budget amendment so that we can start paying those folks when they become town employees. So you have those two, the expenditures and the revenues. And then we have some stormwater fund revenues to recognize the Golden Leaf Foundation grant that the board, I think it was last month, in the amount of $250,000. So you have that as well.
Okay, are there any questions or do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Got a motion by Alderman Thompson, second. Second by Alderman Penix. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. All right, next is the consent agenda. We have approval of the minutes for September 27 closed session, approval of minutes for the September 28 closed session, and a consideration of a reappointment to the Forsyth County Historic Resources Commission. Is there anything anyone in the audience would like to remove from the consent agenda? I'll recognize CJ Idle.
Alderman for reappointing me to the Forsyth County Historic Resources Commission. No, it hasn't happened yet, but I'm just going to go ahead and thank you while I'm up here. It's been a fun time representing the town and helping preserve the history and architecture of the county. I do encourage all of you to come to one of our meetings if you have a chance. We usually are the first Tuesday of the month. The city council for Winston is usually there and has a good attendance, and we would like to see Kernersville and show up and show your support and learn about what we're doing to try to preserve and save the history of the county. Thank you.
Thank you, CJ. All right. Is there anyone who'd like to remove any of the items from the consent agenda? Anyone on the board would like to remove? All right, do I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda? Got a motion by Alderman Barrow, second.
Second.
Second by Alderman Thompson. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. And thank you, CJ, for your willingness to serve in this important role. I was a little concerned that you might have decided you didn't want to do it anymore, but you do such an excellent job that we really appreciate your service. If you want to step forward for just a moment, I think people would be interested in, you've had a lot of different career moves in historic preservation. They might be interested in hearing kind of what you're involved in now with the Historic Resources Commission and professionally. If you just a minute or two.
I started off my career, did undergrad at NC State in History and Religious Studies, master's from East Carolina in anthropology with a focus in historic archaeology. I did cultural resource management, which is what most archaeology is done through National Historic Preservation Act, Section 106 stuff. Then I moved to the museum world. Then I got appointed 4 years ago now for my first term on the Historic Resources Commission. And then last year I was appointed vice chair of the commission, so Kernersville is well represented. The big project we've done since I've been on there is 2 years ago now, we were the pass-through organization for the grant funding to restore the summer kitchen at Kerner's Folly. Unfortunately, Kernersville doesn't have a lot of National Register representation in terms of individual buildings, so we don't do a lot with Kernersville. We could do more if people were interested in that. And then about 3 months ago, I was appointed the executive director for the Museum and Archives in Rockingham County. So I'm kind of in and around the entire historic world. And it has been very interesting serving on the Historic Resources Commission because we do a lot of planning board stuff. We're staffed by the city-county planning department. And our meetings go very similar to how y'all's go. They can be kind of contentious because we are telling people what they can and can't do with the property.
Thank you for your service. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Question.
Yes, sir.
When is your next meeting and where is it located?
Our next meeting will be, not have one this month because nobody put in an application. What most of our meetings are about our COA, Certificate of Appropriateness for Historic Overlay Districts and Historic Districts. Forsyth County has the only two historic districts in North Carolina, Old Salem and Bethabara Park. And people submit changes they want to make to landscapes, exterior of buildings. If it's a National Register building and it was on the register for interior, we do cover interior buildings. That's very rare though. Our next meeting is December 7th at the Public Municipal Building in Winston-Salem. We meet on the 5th floor in the auditorium up there.
What time?
4 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you Google Forsyth County Historic Resources Commission, we're the first thing that pops up, and I can give any other information you might think of later. Or you can always reach out to me. Dawn has my contact information. in touch with. Thank you all.
Thank you, CJ. All right, we are to the town manager's report. Mr. Swisher, you have quite a lot.
Madam Mayor, I do have a lot, and since I had 10:08 in the pool as the time we would get out, it's going to take about 15 minutes per item so that I can win the pool. So, you know, a lot of money at stake there, so I got to win the pool. But anyway, I will try to get through a little faster than that and just owe somebody, I guess. But the first item you have on there, as you may remember, and these two grants are on there, is on my item as well. But we received 3 grants from the state, one for $250,000, one for $200,000, and one for $400,000. We did not have a scope of work recommended for the $400,000 grant. We now have that. We are recommending to use that grant to run fiber optic cable from Fire Station 42. Ultimately, it will terminate at Beeson's Crossroads Fire Station, the station that we are now sharing with Beeson's Crossroads Fire Department. Along the way, we will stub out fiber optic cable down to Ivy Redmond Park, the complex itself, and also to the Ivy Redmond, or not to the Ivy Redmond, to the Parks and Rec Center when it is constructed. So we'll have fiber optic cable all the way down Shields Road and then down Union Cross Road. So what that will do is it will allow those facilities tie in and use the fiber optic. We will no longer have to have North State or Time Warner. It will save us somewhere around about $4,000 to $5,000 a month once it is in there and up and running. So we propose to submit that for the scope of work. If you all approve it, it will be the same as the other 2 grants. We will send it to the state. They will then send back an approval and say yes or no. If they say yes, it will be back on with the contract as the other 2 are tonight. If they say no, we'll come back with another scope of work and resubmit it to them. No match. It's $400,000. There's no match to the grant. And so we would like to ask that you permit that scope of work.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Got a motion by Alderman Thompson.
Second.
I have a second by Alderman Gorham. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous.
The next 2 items are very similar. They're notices of intent to reimburse. One of those is for Paul J. Senior Botanical Garden. The other one is for Providence Baptist Church. All these are, as you may recall, basically we paid for both of these properties from the general fund balance. If at some point in the future we decide to go back and borrow money for those properties, we are required to have this notice of intent to reimburse. I think you have 60 days from the time that you close on the property to adopt this intent to reimburse. May never use it, but I think it expires in 2 years. You have up to 2 years. Go back and borrow the money. So one of them for the Paul J. Senior Botanical Garden is not to exceed an amount of $340,000, and the other one for Providence Baptist Church is not to exceed an amount of $200,000, which is a trade difference on the church and what we anticipate the payoff being on the garden.
Okay, we'll both vote on them separately. Item B is the notice of intent to reimburse for Paul Senior Botanic Garden. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion by J.R. Gorham. Do I have a second? A second by Alderman Barrow. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. All right, so the next is the notice of intent to reimburse for Providence Baptist Church.
So moved.
Got a motion by J.R. Gorham. Second by Alderman Thompson. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. Item C. Wait a minute. Did item C? Where did D? Item D is back to Curtis.
Yeah, item D is the grant that we were awarded for $250,000. We submitted a scope of work. You have it in your packet, the 6 projects that we submitted totaling $250,000. The state approved that scope of work, and you have the grant contract in your packet. We have to approve the contract separately. Even though you all did approve scope of work, they send it back. As I said earlier, they send it back with the contract. And then we approve the contract and send that in to them. They send us money and we do the projects. So projects have not changed. The 6 projects are basketball court renovation at 4th of July Park, the shelter replacement at Harmon Park, playground swing bridge replacement at 4th of July Park, tennis court resurfacing at 4th of July, park entrance, privacy fencing at the mountain bike park, and security locking system at multiple parks.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Got a motion by J.R. Gorham. Second by Chris Thompson. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. Item E.
Item E is the grant that we submitted for $200,000. That was state capital and infrastructure grant. We recommended 4 pieces of equipment in that scope of work. One of those, Caterpillar utility compactor, utility tractor and mower, asphalt crack sealer, and a John Deere UTV. And that scope of work was approved as well. You have that contract in your packet for approval.
Okay, do I have a motion to
Make a motion
accept?
to accept.
All right, motion by Alderman Barrow,
Second.
second by Alderman Gorham. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. Matters to be presented by the town attorney. Oh,
I've got one
You
more
got
that's
one more?
not on here.
all right.
That our public services director called me about this afternoon at about 3 o'clock, I believe. One of our leaf trucks that we use to collect leaves has a bad circuit board in it. It is down, not working, so we cannot use that, which means we will be significantly behind in leaf collection. We have checked on getting another circuit board. The quickest we can get one is 8 months. So not only do we miss this leaf season, we very likely can miss some of next leaf season. We don't know. Dorn has found a used leaf truck that we are recommending to purchase. Then we will put it in as a backup truck once the other one gets up and running. I think we've got, is it 3 or 4 trucks that we have in service? We've got 4 trucks in service, so we're down one. We will bring this one on and then roll that back out as a backup. I'll let Dorn come up and tell you about the truck. I'm not sure. I think you said it was a 2011. So we're in Winston-Salem, and I believe it's $40,000 to $45,000. Quite a bit cheaper than a new one, which runs about $140,000, I believe. But he can also tell you about the one that is broken.
Well, actually, a newer one has gone up significantly. We just quoted one today. It was like $289,000 for a new leaf truck. This one is owned by a private individual in Winston-Salem. He bought it from a municipality. It's a 2011 model. It's got 39,000 miles. Our maintenance crew is going in the morning to look at it, to make sure that it's what pictures and the advertisement say. But the gentleman that owns it said it's one of the better ones he's ever purchased. So we'll find out in the morning. But yes, it's 45,000. We may likely get it for a little less. We'll have to wait and see.
What kind of truck is it?
It's an international body with an ODB vacuum. It's identical to what we use. So our current crews will know exactly how to operate this.
That truck is broke down. What kind is it?
It's the same thing.
Can't go to the junkyard and get another board for it?
They're looking. They can't
Okay.
find one.
Seems to be a run on them all at once.
Leaf season, bro.
Does the
Good
seller-
time for it to break.
Does the seller have any extra parts we could negotiate for while we're visiting him?
It's funny you asked that. No, but we did buy extra parts from Clemens one year because they use identical machines, but no one has parts right now.
And so we would, as I said earlier, if the board approves it and we end up purchasing the truck. Now, if we get over there and the truck's obviously not worth purchasing, we purchase it. But as long as it's still running, we would keep it in the fleet for backup, because I can assure you that as good as they are, next year we'll have another one, most likely go out of service. I think it was last year that one of the brand new ones went out when we got it, wasn't it?
Actually, last year, none of them.
No.
It was the year before.
Year before.
But
So,
I
we
can
got-
say this too, that 2 of our leaf trucks are on the hook truck. So it's just the apparatus itself. Those are newer. The other 2 leaf trucks that are standalone are actually older than this used one we're looking at purchasing.
Let me ask you a question. What kind of guy buys leaf trucks for hobby? What's
Well,
it?
I don't know, but when we auction our stuff off, we have all kinds of people bidding on it.
Somebody that doesn't want to rake his yard.
They are kind of cool, Joe.
So if the board would have any desire to approve that, we will go look at that tomorrow and try to get one in service so that we are just about in the peak of, not the peak, but we are about to start leaf season.
Yeah. I make a motion to purchase this truck so we can get these leaves up in folks' yards.
I second.
Okay, I've got a motion by Alderman Gorham, second by Alderman Penix. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. And before we move on, if this particular leaf truck does not measure up to the advertisement, is there any authority you need to continue to look for another one? Since our next meeting is not scheduled
don't know that
till
we'll
the end of the
find-
month.
I'm not sure that we'll find another one. This just happened to pop up as an advertisement this morning. So we're hoping that we're the first there to look at it. But other than that, we checked with our suppliers and dealers. There's none to be leased. There's none on anyone's lots right now. But again, we'll continue looking. If this one is not what it's advertised to be, we won't offer purchase.
Thank you for your efforts. What else, Mr. Swisher?
Unless you all want to hear me sing for an hour and 5 minutes so that we can hit 10:08, I'm done.
So we expect Mr. Powell to rejoin us at our next meeting. Just
Yes, ma'am.
at the last minute, wasn't able to be here this evening. And Bill Apple as well, who should be back at our next meeting. All right, we wish both of them well and hope they both feel better. All right, item 7, matters to be presented by the mayor and board of aldermen. Mr. Thompson, do you have anything to present tonight?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Barrow?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Gorham?
Negative.
Mr. Penix? I would like to thank everyone involved with the downtown trick or treat, especially the kids with the mystery machine who who really created some Halloween excitement. But seriously, Kernersville Parks and Rec, Kernersville Chamber of Commerce, we appreciate your efforts and we look forward to the other great plans for the holiday season. And to remind everybody to mark your calendar for next year to add the new event of the Veterans Parade.
Airborne all the way.
So is there any further business before the board this evening?
No. Motion to adjourn.
All right, I've got a motion to adjourn by Alderman Thompson,
Second.
second by Alderman Gorham. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you for joining us.